David Icke is an English conspiracy theorist and former footballer and sports broadcaster. He has written over 20 books and spoken in over 25 countries. In 1990, as a spokesman for the Green Party, he visited a psychic who told him he was on Earth for a purpose and would receive messages from the spirit world. This led him to state in 1991 he was a, quote, son of the Godhead, and that the world would soon be devastated by tidal waves and earthquakes. Predictions he repeated on the BBC show Wogan. His appearance led to public ridicule. Icke believes the universe consists of vibrational energy and infinite dimensions sharing the same space. He claims an interdimensional race of reptilian beings, the Archons or Anunnaki, have hijacked the Earth, and a genetically modified human, Archon hybrid race of shape-shifting reptilians, the Babylonian Brotherhood as they're known, or Illuminati or Elite, manipulate events to keep humans in fear so that the Archons can feed off the resulting negative energy. He claims many public figures belong to the Babylonian Brotherhood and propel humanity towards a global fascist state or new world order, a post-era ending freedom of speech. In 2019, Icke sat down with James English for an interview on his life story. Here is that interview.
And today's guest, we've got the legend who is David Icke. First of all, David, I just want to say thanks for coming on the show and giving me your time, man. I appreciate that.
No problem.
You're a very busy man.
Well, thank goodness, really, because when I started out on this journey 30 years ago, there weren't a lot of people who were interested in talking about these subjects, and it was a very lonely road then. But now, as you say, it's finding time to talk to all the people that want to discuss this stuff. So we have made progress, much as the world needs to make a lot more. We have made progress in terms of people are now more open to looking at things that they would have waved away by reflex action before. So it's all good.
Yeah, good. And we'll touch on that. 30 years ago, you made a decision to speak openly about the things that you believed in, which takes massive courage, so massive respect for that. And I think people don't understand that to believe in something that no one else understands or to research things that people don't understand, you are called crazy, and you've said it yourself, you were ridiculed. We'll go right back to the start of your life, how it started, where you were brought up, and how you get involved in the stuff you're involved in now.
Gold. How long have you got? I was born on a council estate in Leicester, where my brother still lives in the same house, in 1952, and we were skinned. But you know, it's a funny thing. We were skinned, and things were incredibly tight, but I never felt deprived. You know, you made your own fun and stuff. You didn't need a thing to do it. You didn't need computers or smartphones, and you had to use your imagination, and you had to do things without any money. But I enjoyed my childhood. I was watching steam trains and playing football, and I enjoyed it. And I didn't perceive myself as deprived, even though we were literally living from week to week. For me, the world is controlled, and humanity is controlled and controls itself, and creates the very ground for which divide and rule is possible, which allows the few to control the many, through its obsession with labels. These labels, labels of race, labels of sexuality, labels of religion, and these are not who we are. They are experiences that our consciousness is having, our awareness is having. And once you start self-identifying with the label, you start looking at yourself in terms of little me. I am my label. I am Ethel, who works on the checkout at Tesco. That's all I am. No, you are an expression of infinite awareness, having an experience called Ethel on the checkout. Bill driving the bus. You say to people, who are you? You say, well, I'm Bill, I come from Manchester, and I drive a bus. No, that's what you're experiencing. Bill is the name of your current experience. What you are is consciousness having that experience. And this might seem like esoteric navel gazing, but it's not. It's a totally different way of interacting with the world, and it's a total different way of self-identifying yourself. Not only are people defining themselves by the labels, the world is increasingly defining them more than ever before by them. And this is where what we call today identity politics comes from, where it's not about what is right or fair or just, which is surely the way to look at anything. It's how does this affect my label? So if I'm transgender and something happens, how does this affect my label? If I'm this race or that religion and something happens, well, how does this affect my label? So people are constantly judging the world by how it affects their label, instead of saying, well, hold on a minute, never mind all that. Is it right? Is it fair? Is it just? No matter what label we're talking about, is it fair? Is it just? Is it right? And so what you have is a situation where we have developed this belief among increasing numbers of people, particularly young people through the universities and colleges, whereby you judge everyone by a group, and then you tag the group, whether it's good or not good. I was going through my life. I left school at 15. I didn't take a major exam because I went to be a professional footballer with Coventry and others. And then my career ended with rheumatoid arthritis. I played a whole year of league football with rheumatoid arthritis. That's a whole story in itself. But what that did is it developed in you, because all these things are within us, and experience brings them out. And if you don't have experience, often they don't come out. So I have this phrase, life tends to give us our greatest gifts, brilliantly disguised as our worst nightmares. Mm. Because often our worst nightmare will bring things out of us that wouldn't otherwise happen. This is why if you bring your kids up and you protect them from everything, you're doing them no favors, because you're not developing strong people who will be able to deal with life. You're developing people who are always looking to be protected. And look at what we have now. And once you have a generation or you have a population that wants to be protected and perceives itself all the time as being a victim, where does the point of power move? It moves to authority, because people look to authority to protect them from what they fear or what they feel victimized by. So what we've been developing is a population of emotionally weak people who perceive themselves in terms of victims. And then I decided, because when I was a kid, I was always reading newspapers and was very interested in journalism. And I eventually became this television presenter. And when you look at my life, as I was saying, all the different elements of it, including going into journalism and seeing the media for what it is, going into politics with the Green Party and seeing politics for what it is, well, I didn't know at the time, but they were all giving me very, very important understandings that would be useful later on. And then what happened is, this is a kind of bizarre story, but it happened. I was in the Green Party, and I was still working for the BBC as a television presenter, and both were leaving me completely cold. The BBC, it's not a great organisation to work for if you care about the truth and you care about more than the official version of everything. And so I was, what do I do with my life now? Because I can't go on with either of these. And what happened was a very strange thing happened, because in the early part of, what would it be, 1989, I started having this feeling that when I was in a room alone, I wasn't alone. And it's like there was an atmosphere there. There's something there. And through 1989, this got more and more and more powerful, to the point where in early 1990, I was working for the BBC, and I was staying at a hotel called the Kensington Hilton, just down from the BBC headquarters. And I'm sitting on the side of the bed and in this apparently empty room, and there was such a sense of a presence there that I said into the room, if there's something there, would you please contact me, because you'll drive me up the wall. Few days later, I'm on the seafront with my son Gareth, little boy then, in Ryde, where I live on the Isle of Wight. And I go into this newsagent shop where Gaz was looking at one of the books. And I said to him, come on, Gaz, we'll go and get some lunch in the town. And as I said it, it was like the atmosphere changed, like the energetic field around me changed. And all I heard, it wasn't a voice, it was a very strong thought form. It said, go and look at the books on the far side. And I'm standing there thinking,
Do not shut yourself.
Yeah. No, basically, what the... So I start walking across to the books in a daze, thinking, what is happening? And I knew this bookshop. The books it sold were for, the tourists that come to the Isle of Wight. They were basically Mills and Boon and perfectly formed English roses and having relationships with perfectly formed, uniformed soldiers and all this stuff. So I'm thinking, what am I going over here for? But right in the middle of these books was one called Mind to Mind by a woman called Betty Shine. A picture was on the front. It was different to the other, so I picked it up and I turned it over and I read the blurb. And she was a psychic. An English psychic, and she was telling her life story. So I bought the book, read it in 24 hours, found it very interesting, contacted her because I wanted to go and see if she would pick up what the hell was happening around me for the last year. And so I went, I told her nothing. What I told her was, because she did this hands-on healing as well, which is just an exchange of energy. It's not mumbo-jumbo, it's an exchange of energy.
Icke.
Yeah, it's just an exchange of energy. That's all it is. But anyway, I told her that because I said, I've got arthritis. Maybe it will help. Because I didn't want to give anything away what was happening to me. So I'm sitting on this bench, this medical type bench in her front room. And, she's chatting away. And she's doing the whole, hands-on healing just next to my left knee. And suddenly the atmosphere changed again. And I felt like a spider's web on my face. Now, what hit me was in her book, she said, when other levels of reality are trying to lock into you, you sometimes feel like a spider's web on your face. Well, I know what that was now. It's electromagnetic energy. You know when you're in a crowd, a football crowd of great emotional excitement, you feel like a charge of energy. Mm-hmm. The hair stands up on your neck, That's electromagnetic. They're electromagnetic fields. So that's what I was feeling. But it did feel like a spider's web on my face. And I said nothing to Betty, but I'm thinking, what the hell? And then about 10 or 15 seconds later, she reels her head back and she said, my God, this is powerful. I've got to close my eyes for this one. And my bum's for going further down the... What have you got yourself into here, Icke? And she starts telling me in March 1990... that I'm going to go out on a world stage and reveal great secrets. I would face enormous opposition, but they, whatever that is, would always be there to protect me. And that there was a shadow over the world, and there was a story that needed to be told, that humanity was going to go through a phase of waking up and coming out of basically its coma, which is programming. And that I was going to go out and do that. One man cannot change the world, but one man can communicate the message that can change the world, was one of the things she said. And I'm sitting there. I'm a television presenter for the BBC. I'm a national spokesman for the Green Party. And I'm thinking, what are you talking about? And I started to realize as it built up and it built up and it built up that actually the world was not like I thought it was. Well, not like I thought it was. I didn't really have a view on that.
Do you think you were just brainwashed it and didn't really understand?
I never did believe that politicians around the world. I always felt there was something else, but you didn't know what it was. Now I was beginning to understand what it was and how it works. Yeah, I suddenly got this feeling I needed to go to Peru. I didn't know why. I'd never been there. I watched them play in the World Cup a few times, but I didn't know anything about it. And long story short, I ended up in Peru, and a series of enormously amazing things happened to me. And it culminated at a place called Siustani, which is near a place called Puno, near Lake Titicaca, highest navigable lake in the world, they say, about 13,000 feet. And I ended up, in a series of synchronicities again, at this so-called Inca site called Siustani, which is old Inca ruins on a hill, and there's a lake and mountains right out in the middle of nowhere. And I went and I looked around it, and then I'd hired this taxi and this guide who came with me, and we're driving away from Siustani, and I'm just daydreaming, which I do all the time, daydreaming out the window, sort of mind wandering, and I'm looking at this hill as we're coming towards it, and as I looked at this hill, all I could hear in my head was "Come to me, come to me, come to me." You know, and I'm thinking, you know, I was introducing the snooker not long ago, actually, and now this frickin' hill's talking to me. You know? It's like, yeah, it's what's going on. I asked the guy to stop. I said, I won't be a minute. I'm going up that hill, and I walked up the hill, and I didn't know where I was going or why. And there's all these kind of stones. It's kind of a kind of circle like of stones, and I walked into the middle. And it's beautiful, and there's not a cloud in the sky. It's a pure blue Peruvian sky, piercing sun, red nose to prove it. Where I'm standing there, and suddenly I feel like my feet are being pulled to the ground, and like magnetically, and I'm feeling like a drill in the top of my head. And the atmosphere changed again. Only this was much more powerful than the news shot. And I heard this. Again, very strong thought form go through my mind, which said, first of all, they'll be talking about this 100 years from now. What? And then, which seemed absolutely crazy, given the sky and the sun, and it will be over when you feel the rain, right? And then what happened is my arms went out like that, without me making any decision to do that. And then this energy got more and more powerful. And in the end, my body's shaking. And what was happening, it's like when you're driving a car and you can't remember the last mile. Your subconscious has been driving the car, thank goodness. I kept coming back to some kind of consciousness and then going back somewhere else. And as I came back to consciousness at one point, my conscious mind, I noticed that over the far distant mountains, there was a light grey mist. And I'm standing there, and I'm seeing this wall of water coming towards me. It's like something out of bloody Moses. The frickin' Red Sea. And by this time, my body's shaking like crazy with this energy coming through me. And then the water hit me. I mean, I'm immediately drenched because it's stair rod rain. And bang, the energy stopped. And I staggered forward like Bambi because my legs were gone. And there was energy pouring out my feet and pouring out my hands. And it's still pouring out of my feet. I couldn't sleep that night because of it. And something changed. People could imagine, you lived your life in a bubble, literally a bubble of information, a bubble of perception, and someone's come along without any warning and popped the bloody thing. And suddenly everything that was outside the bubble was pouring in. So my mind is absolutely awash with information, concepts, insights. What the hell's going on? That, you know, it was just a chaotic mass of information and thought and everything. You know when you press too many keys on a computer and the computer freezes, says, I can't process this. Well, that was me. There was so much information pouring into my conscious mind as a result of that experience in Peru. I couldn't process it. I mean, you basically froze. What happened after 3 months is it unfroze. And now I'm the old David again, but I ain't.
Just more.
I'm seeing the world in a completely different way. as they say when you read a newspaper, the truth is in the white bits, not the words, the bits in between. And so I was seeing things and connections that I couldn't see before.
What do you think, David, as humans, who are we as individuals? Who are we as people? Why are we on this planet, do you think?
Well, let's put this planet and this experience into context, which is something you almost never hear. We have unbelievable numbers of television channels, radio channels now, 24/7, beaming out all over the world, all the time. How often, comparatively, do you see programs about the nature of reality? Actually, who are we? What is this place? What are we doing here? Surely that would be at the center of questioning, but it's not. It's marginalized, because if you have a population that is living a reality which actually doesn't exist, but they experience it as if it does, you've already put them in a cul-de-sac of perception. And that's where you want them. If the few are going to control the many, you can't have an enlightened population. You've got to have an ignorant population that believes in things that aren't real. And that's why so many lies pour out of politics, because they're trying to get the population to believe something that's not true. But this is a much deeper level of it. Let's get them to believe in a reality that's not true, while the very few, not the politicians, are overwhelmingly ignorant as anyone else, in fact more so, but at the core, in the shadows, they understand how reality works, and they want the population not to know. That's why you don't have this, who are we, where are we, how does all this work, discussed in any length, or even at all, mostly in the media. But let's put this into perspective. If I said to most people, if you look into this room, can you see everything in the room, everything in the space that you're looking at? They go, well, yeah, of course I can. No, you can't.
Fourth, fifth dimensions.
Yeah. According to mainstream science, the electromagnetic spectrum, which is basically the reality we live in, is 0.005% of what exists in the universe. And the universe is only one construct within infinity. And visible light, which is the only frequency band that we can see, everything we see visually is within this band, visible light, is a smear of the 0.005%. Some say it's a bit more, as much as 0.5%, but negligible, whatever. And therefore, we're not actually living in a world. We're living in a band of frequency, tiny, which contains an informational field or fields. And we are interacting with those informational fields, just like a computer interacts with Wi-Fi.
Are we? Who am I? What am I here for? And are we come from apes? Are we fish? Are we... There's so many questions you can ask about it. What's true? What's real? What's fake?
We don't come from apes. That's another kind of...
Because there's apes still here
But, when you follow that story back, it's a nonsense. But it's a great diversion from what's actually going on. Because are we computers at the level of consciousness? No. See, if you said to me, who are you? I would say I am awareness. I am a state of being aware. Forget the body. Forget everything. In my base form, I am a state of awareness. I am a point of attention within an infinite stream of awareness. We're all together points of attention within the same stream of consciousness. This is what makes racism and sexism and all these isms utterly nonsensical. Unfortunately, if you want to find racists, then go and find anti-racists. Because anti-racists are obsessed with what? Race. They see race everywhere. In other words, we're back to the labels. They see labels everywhere. You are a that race label, you are a that race label. No, Doesn't matter if you're black, white, or sky blue, pink. They're just vehicles for experience, transitory experiences. When I'm talking about non-human races interacting with and manipulating human society, I've not sat in a darkened room and pulled it out the bloody ether, smoking a weed. I've been to more than 60 countries over 30 years researching this. I've talked to whistleblowers on the inside of the American military and intelligence complex, many of them. I've talked to shamans around the world who are carriers of the ancient knowledge of those societies. And when you put what the two say together, you get the same answer, that yes, there is a non-human force that is manipulating human society. And you see it in ancient accounts. You see the common themes around the world in different cultures describing the same thing. And you see one common theme, for instance, which is that this non-human force manipulated human genetics. This comes out in the Old Testament, for instance, as the sons of God who interbred with the daughters of men. People say, "Oh, that's in the Bible." Well, yes, it is, but the theme is everywhere in non-Bible countries galore, cultures galore. And so you put it all together and you come to conclusions. Then you write it down, you connect the dots, and then you put it out, and then people decide whether they want to believe it or not. That's the deal. When you look at how narrow the band is that we can see and perceive, my experience over the last 30 years says to me that's not an accident. Mm-hmm. Somehow human genetics has been manipulated to only perceive a very narrow band of reality, which makes us obviously far more controllable. I said back in the 90s, when I was producing the first books, that there was a plan for the world. And that plan included the destruction of freedom of speech, and that money would be taken out of circulation, so only cashless digital money would be used, which has fundamental implications for freedom and control. And a stream of other things which have all come true. And the reason I could do that is very simple. How did Aldous Huxley, in 1932, in his book Brave New World, how was he able to describe genetic, drug, and other things that in a dystopian way that is now happening? How could George Orwell be so accurate in 1948? What about the other people that I quote in my books, insiders way back, who were saying this is what's going to happen because this is the plan? And it's all happening in detail, not even theme, detail, because there is a plan, there is a script. And what I've done for the last 30 years is work to uncover what that is. And once you know what's planned, predicting the future is quite straightforward. Now, what's been happening? The internet was actually created. We can talk about that if you like, about why that was and where it's going. But one of the reasons is that they wanted to put all information eventually that people receive and where they get their information, thus their perceptions, which come from information received, that's what perceptions are, from the internet digitally. And the reason they want to do that is because once it's digital, then you can use algorithms to censor. You don't even need human input. Once the codes are in place, the algorithms, as they're doing now, will censor what people can see and hear. Now, what is freedom of speech? It's the freedom to speak. And if you have the freedom to speak, then you have the ability to challenge the prevailing narrative, and thus you're never in a situation where people only see and hear what the authorities want them to see and hear. For that to be reached, that situation, free speech has to be deleted. Otherwise, they're not going to get there. That's why free speech is being deleted. If you want something to happen, which, if you had an open debate, you couldn't win it, and therefore it couldn't happen, you simply don't have the debate. And, I have a phrase, if you want to know and see the foundation elements of this agenda of human mass control, look at the subjects you cannot have another opinion about. Look at the subjects where if you have a different opinion to the official narrative, you're going to get abuse, ridicule, and other consequences. That's the agenda. I point out when things happen that I said them, but I don't, way back, but I don't say, see, told you so. I do it for a reason, and this reason. If I knew about it 20, 30 years ago, it's not random, is it? Mm-hmm. It's not just happening. It's planned. Otherwise, I couldn't have known it. How could Orwell have known it? How could Huxley have known it? And these other people that I quote, how could they have known it? How could someone I quote in the books, a Rockefeller, big-time Rockefeller insider, have described the internet that was coming in 1969? How could he have done that? How could he have said in 1969, we are going to make boys and girls the same? How would he have known that? Because there's a plan, and it's projected much further ahead than people
realize. The
realize.
plan for the people controlling the world maybe are 100 years ahead, 200 years ahead.
Yeah, because it's another big story. Once you go off into another force that's not human, their timeline and their projections are not the same that we live in, where we, if you're going down a river on a canoe, you see as far as the next turn in the river. But what if there's a force that can see the whole river from start to finish? Then they have a completely different timeline and a completely different ability to project the future. How did George Orwell know about smart TVs? Smart TVs, and we're only seeing Mark 1, 2, 3 at the moment, not where they're planned to go. They have cameras in them and microphones in them that can film you in your front room and record your conversations in your front room. Well, it's admitted. Somebody found them, and then they had to admit that it was true. In 1984, which came out in 1948, George Orwell was talking about in the 1984 Society that there were telescreens in every home, and the telescreens were constantly filming you.
The Big Brother's watching.
Big Brother's watching. So, because it's projected long into the future, if you can access that, either because you're an insider or 30 years of bloody research full time, then you can predict the future. Because the simple thing is, if nothing intervenes to stop that process unfolding, that will happen. So you can predict the future. The whole point of what I do is to alert enough people eventually to all these things that there is an intervention, and it is stopped. This technological society is a Trojan horse of monumental proportions, and if people remember nothing, they should remember this. They're now openly talking is that by around the year 2030, humanity will have their brains connected to artificial intelligence. And he's very open about it. As this goes on, artificial intelligence will do more and more of human thinking until human thinking as we know it now is basically negligible. In other words, you'll be a computer terminal on someone else's internet. And the reason they're being so open about it is the sales pitch, which is you'll be superhuman if you do this. And what you'll be is subhuman, and human consciousness, human thought, human emotion as we've known it will be over. Because every thought, every emotional response will come from AI. He who controls AI will then control every human's perceptions directly who is connected to AI. Stage 1, you get the population addicted to technology they can hold. Well, basically achieved, smartphones, tablets, etc. And you target especially the young. Why? Because they're going to be the adults at the point you want to bring in this full-blown AI-controlled human. You want them so addicted and obsessed with technology that, as happens now, on one expression of it, they'll get up in the middle of the night and go and queue in the dark outside an Apple bloody store to get the first version of the new thing. Get them addicted enough, and they'll queue up waiting to be connected to AI, right? So that's why they're targeting the young. Stage 2, because what you want to do, you want to get in the body. And if they went directly to the body without anything in between, people would go, what's going on? Totalitarian tiptoe, you see. So the next stage is on the body, what they call wearables, holdables to wearables. This is your Apple Watch and your Bluetooth and all these gadgets now that people wear that are connected to the internet. And then you go to the next stage, which is in the body. I spoke a little while ago, last year, in Sweden. And people, thousands of people now in Sweden are being microchipped. And queuing up for it, having parties to celebrate. Ethel's been microchipped. And what transformed my life and what would transform anybody's life is to reassess their self-identity. Stop self-identifying with labels. Stop saying that's who I am. No, that's what you're experiencing. What you are is the awareness, the eternal state of awareness that is having the experience. And if you come from that point of view, the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune and outrageous abuse and Twitter storms are like, and? The people who are abusing you, who are ridiculing you, who are telling you you're not good enough, right? Well, who the hell are they? Who are they? Who are they? Why do they matter? I can tell you from personal experience that people who abused me years ago are now coming to my talks and reading my books. Because the thing is that they'll think something else tomorrow. That's for sure. Whatever they're saying now, they'll think something else tomorrow, and they'll say something else tomorrow. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean you don't listen to people and say, oh, yeah, they've got a point there. Maybe I'll look at that. That's not the same thing. It's being intimidated and being broken in spirit by how other people see you. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Because anyone who's ever done anything in the world, look out all the way through history, anyone who's made a real positive difference to the world has overwhelmingly faced ridicule and abuse before they were accepted to have been right all along.
Yeah. You've been an absolute
Thanks, mate.
pleasure, and for what you've achieved and the balls to keep carrying on and doing what you do, it takes
No problem.
a massive amount of courage.